Welcome back to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. Thanks for all the likes and comments on the last video. And now let's start with the first story. It's called On-Call Pay. I used to work in IT for a medium-sized company, part of a 20-person team. Each technical area had two specialists. For example, servers and databases had a pair, and I was one of the two responsible for networking and firewalls. Now, in our country, the law doesn't allow companies to force employees to be on call 24/7, but the company needed someone available in case of emergencies. So we had a kind of unofficial agreement. In exchange for being on call every 2 weeks, we'd receive about 500 euros a month. In return, the expectations were relaxed. We weren't expected to respond immediately or be ready to work within a specific time frame. Since calls were rare, maybe 2 or 3 times a year per team, it was more about being mentally available than actually working. So overall, the setup worked well, except I wasn't part of it. When I first joined the company, my manager just left me out of the on-call agreement. At first, that was fine. I didn't have the access or experience yet to really contribute in emergencies. But 2 years later, I overheard my higher-up telling others, if something goes wrong, we'll just call him, referring to me. They still weren't paying me the on-call bonus, but they were now relying on me to be available. Eventually, the day came. A critical system issue affected the entire company. Instead of calling me himself, my higher-up had another colleague contact me. I picked up the phone, and as much as I hated to leave the team hanging, I said no. I wasn't part of the agreement, and they had made it clear I wasn't eligible. I knew it meant more work for everyone else, but the principle mattered. So I made a change. If they didn't officially want me on call, then I wouldn't be reachable. I changed my mobile number and only gave it to my direct partner, who also agreed the situation was unfair. He even backed me up, saying he didn't have my number if asked. I disconnected my home phone, which I rarely used anyway, and gave HR the number from my parents' house, with strict instructions to only call if it was truly urgent and not work-related. And then I waited. Sure enough, my moment came. My partner was away on vacation, and over the weekend the company's firewall, which also served as the network gateway, started malfunctioning. Only he and I had the necessary access. No one else could fix it. By Monday, I walked into the office to hear that everything had crashed over the weekend. A network interface on the firewall was repeatedly failing. With no way to reach me, they had to call in external support at high cost and spent the entire weekend trying to fix it. Critical calculations that were supposed to run didn't. That same day, my manager, not the higher-up, called me into his office and immediately made it official. I was now part of the on-call rotation. HR would handle the paperwork later. All I had to do was make sure I was reachable that evening. I handed over my new phone number, and from that point on, no one ever questioned it again. The next story is called Lunch Breaks. My manager once sent a passive-aggressive message to the whole team. It read, "Lunch breaks are unpaid, but everyone is expected to be available during core hours, including lunch." It was clearly aimed at me. Now, I used to step out briefly during lunch, maybe take a quick walk or grab a coffee. I was never late, never missed meetings, and always got my work done. But if she wanted me to be available during lunch, fine. I'd play along. Starting the next day, I began eating lunch at my desk. No headphones, no typing, just sitting there, clearly not working. If someone sent me an email or pinged me, I ignored it. If they came over to my desk, I smiled politely and said, "I'm on my unpaid break, but I'll jump on it at 1. Then, one day, she messaged me at 12:10, asking for a report, ASAP. I didn't reply. At 1, I responded. By then, someone else had already scrambled to finish it. Later, she asked why I hadn't responded. I simply said I was available, just not working, as instructed. She never mentioned lunch breaks again. The third story is called Mow the Lawn. Back in high school I had a pretty successful lawn mowing hustle. I had enough regular clients to make a decent income. Like any outdoor work, sometimes the weather didn't cooperate. When it rained for days, lawns got longer and longer. Most customers understood they just had to wait until it dried up enough to mow. But there was one guy who didn't quite get that. He was unusually impatient. After several rainy days, he insisted I come take care of his yard. That it was too long, even though it was still raining that day. I warned him it wouldn't go well, but he didn't care. He wanted it done. So I showed up and did what I could. But mowing wet, thick grass with a push mower doesn't really work. The grass doesn't cut cleanly. It just bends over and clumps together. The result looked bad immediately, and 2 days later, when it dried, it looked even worse. His house was on a busy corner, so until I could come back and do it right a week later, it looked like a troop of drunken monkeys had gone at it with scissors. It was a mess, worse than if he'd just waited. The only part I felt bad about was that everyone knew it was my work. So as soon as it dried out enough, I went back and cleaned it up properly. Made sure it looked sharp. The last story is called Work for Free. Many years ago, I was a developer in my first job at a small software company. I had a 1-year contract and was building an administrative system to handle equipment tests and results. The system was developed specifically for a client, and at the time, most software was custom made. The client was cooperative and had a capable IT officer on site who could develop software himself, but he didn't have the time to build a system from scratch. As the end of my contract approached and the software was already in use, I tried to negotiate new terms, but the offer I received wasn't compelling. The job market wasn't great, and the cost of living in the area was low, so I suppose they assumed I'd stay, but I found another job. And being young and mostly interested in working with new technology, I decided to move on. On my final day, I shook hands and wished them well. That didn't go over well. They insisted I stay, but under local law, if I returned the next day, I would have automatically accepted a new contract, which would include obligations like a non-competition clause and an 8-week notice period. So I left. A week later, I received a threatening letter from their lawyer, accusing me of abandoning my post and causing financial damage. I wasn't too worried legally, but without much money or legal access, even a small issue could be problematic. Apparently, the client had submitted some support tickets about the software, and no one at the company could resolve them. I had already started my new job and no longer had the source code or development libraries. I spoke to our lawyer, who advised me to go back and help. Commit to nothing, do just enough to show goodwill. And that would be enough to satisfy legal obligations under the circumstances. So I returned to the software company and picked up the source code and necessary libraries. I informed them that I needed to go to the client's site, since I required their hardware setup to reproduce the issues and verify the fixes. The company agreed. They likely thought they had forced me into doing free work, as a kind of a punishment for not renewing my contract. I went to the client's site, worked with the IT officer to set up a development and testing environment, and got to work. By the end of the day, I had addressed the list of issues. Before wrapping up, I mentioned that I would delete the source code, but needed a break and would grab some food. I suggested they continue testing in the meantime. When I came back, the tests were complete and successful. I deleted all the source code, took photos of the deletion process and sent a report. While I was doing that, I noticed the IT officer labeling a portable drive, and on the screen a completed backup process was visible. The client never submitted another ticket. They also didn't renew their maintenance or support contract. Thanks for watching the video to the end. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. Also, if you want to support me further, check out the channel membership or Patreon. And now, I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.